were able to. You didn't have to save as much as you planned on, right? Um, Other programs, a very popular one that comes up a lot is the student loan program. I would think that you guys have heard of that one before, Smart Buy.
Say it again.
Smart Buy 3.0. This program,
Haven't heard of it.
so you can pay off student loans through the purchase of your first home. You can pay off up to $50,000 in student loans right now when you purchase a home. So pretty much how that program works, the state of Maryland is going to pay off your student loans at closing, and then it's going to be forgiven over a 5-year period. So if you live in the home for 5 years, your student loans are wiped out. Now, it does have to be the whole amount of the student loans. So if you have a doctor that has $200,000 in student loans, they might not qualify because they would have to pay those student loans down to 50,000. The state won't do partial payoffs, so it has to be the full amount of the student loans. So if you're 50,000 or below, you can possibly take advantage of this program.
Ryan, what's the typical profile of the buyer who would best benefit from the state bond products?
Yeah, so
what's that buyer look like?
So first-time home buyer, ideally, there are some programs that you can take advantage of if you're not a first-time home buyer, but you cannot own a home at the time of settlement. But the best route is you're a first-time home buyer, and then there's income limits per county and per household size. So a lot of the counties are looking anywhere from 114 for 1 to 2 person household, 114,000 for your household income. That's like Baltimore City and most of the areas surrounding Baltimore City. And then when you get to more of the counties touching DC, the income limits are going to be a little bit higher, 140-ish, 160-ish for household income. In terms of credit score, we're looking for a 660 or higher for this specific program, for Maryland Mortgage Program. Might be possible to get it done at a 640, but 660 is really what you want to shoot for.
Right.
And then other than that, they have to take some education. So they have to take a first-time home buyer course, but it's all done online. So it's pretty simple, doesn't take too long. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
They offer conventional, FHA, VA, USDA. So you can pair these programs with all those standard loan programs out there.
All right. What do you advise realtors as to how they get the ball rolling with their people on this? Do you have information you can send folks, or how do you want to work that?
Certainly. Yeah, I can follow up with some flyers, post it on the Facebook group, whatever's easiest. That way you guys have some material readily available. Right. What I always say is if you're a real estate agent, just know enough to be dangerous, right? Know that these programs are out there. Bring them up in conversation. But you don't have to qualify people. You don't have to sell the product per se. Right. Just know it's out there to get people thinking, right?
Right.
And then you say, talk to my loan officer, whoever that might be.
Exactly. But what we want to make sure you do is be the one that suggests it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be the progenitor of the idea. The first time buyer is looking for that. Any buyer is looking for that, right? For you to provide, if not the solution, the suggested solution for them, right? That's what's going to give us value. That's what's going to add value in our contacts to people. Right?
Yep.
And that's the work we have to do. The first time buyers in this country right now, it's the lowest it's ever been, right? 25% of the buying population is first timers. A normal market is 33%. It's down to 25, right? So will those buyers start to enter? Yes, they will, likely so, but it's probably going to take another interest rate adjustment below that 6% number, which I think, Ryan, before you got on, I'm saying fingers crossed. I hope we're there in about 6 months at 6%. We'll see. I believe it'll be New Year's Eve if we get down to 5.75. We'll all be busting balloons. We'll be happy with that, but we'll see. We'll see what we got. So thanks on the hot programs there. Talk to me about buy downs. Is that happening?
Yeah, it is. And I'm sorry, John, just to backtrack a little bit, I do want to add in 2 very quick programs that we our in-house programs for us at First Home Mortgage that we rolled out recently. The first one is First Home Heroes. This program, we're going to waive our processing and underwriting fees, comes out to about $1,600 in fees that we can waive for any teachers, first responders, police officers, firefighters, and medical professionals. So they don't have to be a first-time home buyer. They don't have to be under income limits. They just have to be within those professions, one of those professions, and they'll get about a $1,600 credit at closing, which is pretty cool.
Great.
Yep.
Yanni, while we've got Ryan on, could you put his contact information in the chat and leave it there so folks can see it so he doesn't have to interrupt what he's doing?
Thank you.
Great.
And then the last one I'll mention quickly, we call it First Home Advantage. And this program is trying to help out with that increasing first-time home buyers being able to purchase. And it offers discounted interest rates for buyers that are under certain income limits, 100% of the area median income. So, some areas we're looking in the mid 100,000 range that they have to be under, and they're going to get discounted interest rates just for being a first-time home buyer and under those income limits.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff.
Yep. And then you mentioned buy downs, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want to talk about.
I'm hearing, I took a CE class and those are dangerous. They were suggesting buy downs. Yep. I remember the 2008, 9, and 10 stuff. So, any of those funky programs scare me, but I'm understanding that there's some safety and some wisdom to them now. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's some people get worried when they hear about it just because they're thinking of it like an adjustable rate mortgage, but it's not. It's technically a fixed rate mortgage because you know what your interest rate is going to be when you sit down at the closing table for the whole term of your loan. So, for example, the most common one right now is the 2-to-1 buy down. So what that means is the first year that you're in the home, your interest rate is going to be 2% below what you locked into. Second year in the home, you're going to be 1% below what you locked into. And then the third year and from there on out, you're at the interest rate that you locked into when you settled. So let's say today someone locked into a 6.5 interest rate, right? The first year, their payment is going to be based off a 4.5% interest rate. Second year, 5.5. Third year, and there on out, 6.5%. Okay. Now, how the program works is it has to be funded by someone other than the buyer. So the buyer can't pay for this buy down program. Typically, it's going to be paid by a seller or a builder. So you're asking for some seller help in order to fund this program.
Great. Let me go back to Rachel. Are you still on the screen, Rach? Yeah. You're on mute. Are you doing settlement? Are you doing settlements, seeing buy downs?
I haven't seen too many, but they are. I have seen a few.
A couple. Okay. Good.
And we had a question in the chat. What is the cost of the buy down?
Good question. So it's going to depend a little bit on the specific scenario. Really, the loan amount is what it's going to be based off of, because the buy down itself, or the funds for the buy down, is really just making up the difference in the buyer's monthly payment, right? So if they go from a 6.5% interest rate to a 4.5% interest rate, and they're saving $200 a month, that's what the seller help is going towards. It's going towards that gap in the mortgage payment. So when settlement occurs, the buy down funds or the seller help that they're receiving is going to go into an escrow account for the buyer, and it's going to go to replenish that mortgage payment each month. So if you're putting the minimum down payment, 3% for conventional, 3.5% for FHA, it's usually going to come out to about 2.5% seller help that you need. If you have a buyer putting down 20%, it might be a little under 2% seller help that you're going to need in order to fund this program.
I think Anne Marie had a question about what's the benefit to the seller.
Yep. So we have seen listing agents advertise buy downs on their listing to try and generate more buyer activity. So if you have a listing that has been sitting for a little while, you can advertise, hey, you can get an interest rate. Our sellers are willing to pay for you to get an interest rate 2% below current market levels for the first year, 1% below the second year. And that's going to be much more effective for them than lowering their sales price. In order to get to a point where you're going to be at the same mortgage payment in that first year as the mortgage payment would be if you were to do the buy down, it's going to cost way more money to lower the sales price to get there compared to just paying for this buy down program. So really it's just helping sellers be a little bit more, get some more activity to their listing.
Any questions on any other programs that you have seen, heard of, that Ryan could possibly address? Anything piquing your curiosity out there?
Anne Marie was curious if all lenders are able to offer that type of buy down service.
Are able to, yes. Do they all? No. They have to have the program set up within the company in order to use it. Yep.
Oh, I see. Robin just got a new buyer. Robin Robinson. Yeah, she's holding a new buyer. That's great.
And the other cool thing with the buy down program, those funds are going into an escrow account, right? So if you choose to refinance, let's say you did the 2-to-1 buy down, that means you have a lower interest rate for 2 years. If you choose to refinance after a year, that money that's in the escrow account is the buyer's. So they'll get that credited back to them at the refinance. They can put it towards the cost of the refinance if they wanted to. So that money will not go unused.
So in your back room, Ryan, what are you people around the chairman's table? What are you saying about recession coming up? What are you saying about the industry? Level with us here. What do you think?
Yeah. So in terms of the outlook, much more positive right now compared to if you were to ask me 4 months ago, right?
Okay, so tell me why.
So it seems like we're on the other side of it, right? We're much closer to the end of this than to the beginning of this. And main reason I say, we just look at mortgage rates. We peaked in the low to mid 7% range, and we've come down about a full percent since then. We're seeing rates in the low 6s if people are willing to pay some points. We're seeing rates even in the high 5s for those really good borrowers. Now, why has that happened? Pretty much because of the Fed's actions over the last couple months. So if we look back over the majority of the Fed meetings last year, they continually raised the federal funds rate by 0.75%. That was kind of the standard for a while there. At the last meeting, they only raised it by 0.5%. At this next meeting, they're projecting to raise it by 0.25%. So you can see that the rate increases are going down and down and down. They're tapering off. So yes, they're still raising interest rates, which we don't love, but the fact that they're tapering off from what they were raising it by is a good news. And the mortgage industry or the market is always forward looking. So mortgage rates do not react when the Fed increases interest rates. The mortgage market reacts when people suspect that the Fed is going to raise interest rates. So the fact that we are expecting the Fed to increase the federal funds rate by 0.25% at the meeting at the end of this month, that's already factored into mortgage rates because we're forward looking, we're ahead, right? Now where we have to be careful is if the Fed comes out and says, hey, we actually need to take a step back. What we were doing wasn't as effective as we thought, and we're going to have to increase rates by 0.5% now instead of 0.25%. That would be bad news, right? That would not be good for mortgage rates. We, of course, are all hoping that that's not the case, but only time will tell.
Would they likely do that as a response to increased inflation fears?
Yeah.
I mean, is that the driver there?
Yeah, pretty much. That is their main focus right now is inflation. And that was the big problem for a lot of last year. They were projecting X for inflation. The report would come out and it would be higher than they were expecting.
Right.
That kind of switched at the end of last year, and we got a couple good inflation reports where it was just below what they were expecting, but just below is enough, right? Yeah. I mean, we're talking a difference of 0.2% here. A 0.2% swing can change their perspective entirely. So, that inflation report that comes out each month is very important.
Right. Other than some, I guess in the past 45 to 60 days, some better news on gas prices. Food is still a challenge. Rates are still a challenge, and we have this wild card in Ukraine, which is the United States is leading the charge and financing that as we do for most of the free world.
It's a great point. I mean, we talk about these leading indicators, like inflation, because that tends to be the most important one. But at any given moment, one of these other factors can step in and play a role and kind of change what everyone's projecting, just because there is a lot of unknowns out there.
Yeah. And that unknown is probably somewhat of a contributor to people being frozen in motion. I have a sense that buyers and real estate agents too are afraid of making a mistake, in either predicting something that they maybe are talking out of school, not certain of. They want to be really, really genuine and authentic with their clients. You certainly want to put a smiling face on the pig if you can. I understand that, but we're cautious because we're decent people, and we don't want to sell people down the road and become, typical Glengarry Glen Ross salespeople. We don't want to do that, and that rubs against us, So I think when you start to think about you're dealing with your customers and clients, you're coming from a base of number one, authenticity, yourself, and number two, acquiring the knowledge that you need in discussions like we're having today, right? Ryan, you and I talked about the messaging, and I think that's valuable to leave folks with the thought. From your point of view, give me 3 or 4 of the messages that you would be getting across to sellers first and then buyers, or take it the other way around. It's up to you which way you want to do it. Let's start with sellers, if you would.
Yeah. So that is a good one. I have to change my mindset because I'm always thinking about buyers, right?
well, then I'll tell you what, do buyers first as you're thinking in the back of your mind about sellers.
Okay. So if I'm working with buyers, some messages to get across, something that we see out there all the time is the buy now, refi later, right? Get in the home now. I understand interest rates are higher, but not as much competition. Maybe you're able to negotiate a little bit, and let's get yourself into the home if you're ready, right? We're not pushing people to buy if they're not ready, but if it's your time, let's not worry about the market. Let's not worry about timing the market. Let's just get you in now. And if history repeats itself, chances are rates are going to go down and you can refinance later.
Okay.
Right. So kind of circling back to what you were saying about, we want to be authentic and we want to be careful. We don't want to advise the wrong way. If we're just presenting facts, right, and we're presenting based off data, then, we're guiding them to a decision, but we're not making the decision for them. You know, that a lot of times I'll use that phrase, if history repeats itself, because I'm basing it off what has happened over the last couple decades, right? And they're aware of that too. And, you know, I'll let them know this has been an interesting couple of years, something we haven't gone through before. So it's hard to say what's going to happen coming out of this, but if history repeats itself, X, Y, Z, right? And people are like, oh yeah, I get it. I understand you can't say exactly what's going to happen. And that tends to be a good way to go about it. In terms of some other messages, yeah, so buy now, refi later. I would say, like, know the facts, which I kind of brought up in that too. So know how to handle these conversations. Whenever you get an objection from a buyer, the longer you wait, the longer that you have to think about it, the more uncertainty it's going to put in their head, right? If you can just answer that right away, right off the bat, then you're answering it confidently, and they're going to look at you as the expert, and they're going to say, okay, this makes sense, right? Because you answered quickly, like it wasn't a challenge at all. Another thing I would circle back to knowing your programs, right? It's going to take a little something extra with those buyers right now to keep them motivated and get them out there. So know that this stuff is out there, so you can be the one to bring it up, just like John said. You can be the resource for them, and you can be the one that they end up talking to first and seeing all the way through till closing day.
There's a great observation that Tommy Hopkins has made in several of his books. And, you know, Hopkins now is 30 years old in the literature, you know, so that makes him really ancient, I guess. But some of his stuff is extremely relevant, extremely relevant. Back to Ryan's second point. When you're interviewing, working with a buyer, one of the practices that Hopkins always suggested is you're making some sort of a contact with the buyer. If it's a buyer that you don't know, someone not recommended to you, or someone that you have no feeling for, then you're on a fishing expedition to find out about them. And it's hard to anticipate what they're going to ask you. Most of us aren't dealing quite with that. We're not getting cold buyers. We're getting buyers recommended to us if our CRM is working properly and whatnot. So his practice, when there was somebody that he had an inkling about, he would sit down and say, what are the questions that this couple is going to ask me? And he would prepare anticipated answers for those questions. And he would be right about 50 to 60% of the time. And 60% of the time, if he anticipated properly, he'd be able to do what Ryan was suggesting, not hesitate and give them a good answer, right? That builds confidence, right? That builds confidence. Think of us when we go to the doctor. I mean, they got our charts in front of us, you know, they're looking at the charts. They know our numbers. But the couple of doctors that I have been to have always said to me, so how you feeling today? Tell me what's wrong. You know, any pain, any aches, any pains, anything bother you? And they prod me. They say, you sure? Nothing? You know, you're old now. Something's got to be bothering you, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That's the kind of in-depth work we have to do to align ourselves as not only salespeople, but people who care about their clients. That's the kind of stuff that we have to do. And it goes that way for sellers too. So back to sellers, anything trigger for you on a seller message, Ryan?
I guess the biggest thing is inventory, right? Still don't have enough. So yes, to my one point with buyers, there's less competition than there was, but that's also not saying a ton, because we saw the craziest market maybe we've ever seen in the real estate industry in terms of buyers having to compete, right? But that's definitely toned down a lot compared to what we were seeing. Right. But at the same time, there's still nearly not enough inventory out there for the buyers that are looking around. So, you know, it's still a good time to sell based off that.
Yeah, the inventory right now, active inventory in October, was down 18% statewide. And surprisingly, and good news, in November, it was only down 11%, which is a move in the right direction. Now, that said, new listings coming on the market, they're averaging down 25%.
Wow.
That's the number that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very interesting to see. I'm thinking what the spring market in the DC area, which typically starts the Monday morning after the Super Bowl, is going to start to look like, to see what we've got at February 15th into March 15th. I think that's going to be a real significant time in terms of what people are, what sellers are going to be entering this market for the spring market. It will be interesting. Ryan, what else you got for us? And then I want to open it for the last 10 or 12 minutes to any questions.
I guess one thing to talk a little bit about, there's been quite a bit of doom and gloom surrounding our industry over, the last year or so, especially coming off the highs that we had in 2021. And I mean, my biggest thing is just don't participate in those talks, right? Let's focus on the positives. Let's put our heads down. Let's get to work. And like I said at the beginning, this is a working year. So might have to work a lot harder to do the same amount of business, right? But for those of us that do work hard, do stay positive, what we're setting ourselves up for in the next several years, I mean, it's gonna look good on the other side of this, right? There's going to be a lot of people that are getting out of the industry. I don't know if you have any stats on that.
I do, which is hopeful from this sense, but I'll add that after you finish.
Yep. So the ones who make it through this and the ones that use this time to be productive, I think are going to be sitting real pretty.
Right.
And then just talking a little bit about Maryland and the market here. There's quite a bit of speculation, home prices declining, are we having another crash, blah, blah, blah. I know you've all seen it, and I'm sure none of you believe that's going to happen. But one thing that we have to keep in mind for Maryland, even if there is some sort of correction or a small crash, whatever it might be, Maryland tends to be one of those markets that holds up. And it's because of what we have surrounding us. There's so many government jobs, there's so many military bases. Unemployment in the Midwest is not going to be the same as unemployment here, right? If we get into a situation where unemployment across the country is high, we're going to be lower in Maryland than they are in most other states. So when other markets suffer, ours isn't going to suffer the same way. Yeah. So we're fortunate to be in this market.
Yeah. One of the very valuable things in terms of our positioning, in terms of where our agents do business. We do business in Anne Arundel, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Frederick, Howard, Montgomery, PG, Wycomico, and Worcester, right? We do 73% of the state's real estate business.
Wow.
That's our backyard. That's where our agents work, right? So to Ryan's point about Maryland being kind of it's not an insulated state, but it's not going to have the same kind of a disaster as parts of California may have in terms of sales and whatnot. It's not going to be San Francisco, or it's not going to be LA.
Austin, yeah, and Tampa Bay and all that kind of stuff.
Tampa's another good example, right? Think of what those poor people in Florida are doing, particularly down the West Coast where the storm hit. What kind of real estate do they have to sell there? Who knows? Let's open it up to some questions. Anybody?
I had a quick comment too, just adding to what Ryan was saying.
Go ahead, Jan.
About control and everything like that, and what you can focus on. And we don't have any control over the interest rates, what happens with the decisions that the Fed makes and all that kind of stuff. We can only control where we put our energy. And I've said that, I think, a lot over the last year. And I totally agree that the people that come through this are going to be stronger for it in a position that is a lot stronger than it is now. So keep doing the daily work, stay focused on that, and love the process. Just be totally engaged and involved in the process. The people that show up to this kind of thing and that are availing themselves of the information that people like Ryan bring to the table, I think everybody is on the right track with that kind of approach. So be a sponge, be open to learning and adjusting. I think the people that are nimble are going to be the ones that make it out of this really well, that make the appropriate adjustments, and double down on what's working, double down on your sphere, and make sure that the people that you're working with are clearly educated on what's happening as much as possible, because they see what Ryan's talking about, some of the doom and gloom and stuff like that. But they're basing the talking heads of the media base that off of markets like Austin or markets like Tampa Bay, or there's one big one in like Utah or something like that, where these markets are way down, but that's because they also had a massive pump, where this market maybe didn't have that kind of huge pump. We definitely saw an increase in prices, but what we're seeing now, it's just a little bit more level, where the listing price is actually close to the sales price, where at one point it was like 120% or something like that. And that's not healthy. So I think this is part of that balancing act. I think we are further along, Ryan, like you're saying. I mean, broader markets have been going down for 6-12 months or something like that. So, and with the Fed looking at maybe a pivot in 2024 or something like that, I think we're heading toward the other side. So stay focused, stay engaged. We're here to help, and I think we'll all get through this.
Yeah. To Ryan's point a little while ago, National Association of Realtors just came out with bragging about being up to 1.6 million realtors nationally, right? That's about 500,000 too many,
Yeah.
From my, and it'll reflect itself, because roughly a third of them don't sell anything anyway. They're just carrying the license, right?
Right.
Supposed to tell you what people think about how easy our business is. They should try it sometime. Figure out how easy our business is.
John?
It's damn hard, requires a lot of work. Thing to keep in mind for you guys is, in a market like this, it's easy to do nothing for a couple of days in a row. If you do nothing for a couple of days in a row, you're going to be in a slump. I'm a big baseball guy, right? If you don't get in the batting cage every day, right? If you don't get in the cage every day and you do it once or twice a week, you're not going to be able to hit the ball, right? So my advice to you is kindly do something related to your business every day, even if it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Look at your 45-hour week, if you work 45 hours, and say, even in this slump, even in this, when I don't have any customers, I have no resources right now for customers, I am not going to give less than 15 to 20 hours a week trying to do something in this business to generate business, right? If you do that consistently, something will land, and that will propel you into working a little bit more, right? But for God's sakes, don't do nothing in this period, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the neighbor, waiting for your aunt's cousin's son's daughter to finally ask the guy to marry them, and you got to lead. Don't wait for grandma to get sick or grandpa to get sick to sell their house. Don't do that. That will all happen. You still have to generate business.
Hey, John.
Businessman. George?
Yeah, I just a couple quick comments. And you got to maintain a positive mindset throughout all this. You can't listen to all the doom and gloom. Even though I know things have slowed down, I don't like to use the term when I speak to a seller or a buyer that things are slowing down, that things are dropping. They're normalizing. It's a little bit more of a positive. I know it's just a play on words, but it's a little bit more positive than saying things are slowing. It's normalizing. It's going back to what it used to be. And you have to keep that positive mindset, because when you're in a meeting with a client, they can feel the negativity or they can feel the positivity. It's either one. They can feel it, and it motivates them as to move in whatever direction you're trying to get them in. And the last thing, it helps us all. I know what COVID did. It helps us all to come into the office, because when you come into the office and other agents are around you, you learn and it motivates you. And we got to start getting back into that mindset of coming back in, even if it's an hour a day, whatever it might be, it motivates us all.
Okay, thank you, George. I don't want to ignore Debbie's comment, Debbie Scherer. Hi, Deb. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Saying that she assumes the programs are the same in Delaware, as Delaware was not mentioned. Ryan, could you comment on that? Or maybe that's not an area that you guys work in.
We do serve Delaware. That is correct. We offer those same programs in Delaware. The only thing that wouldn't be offered would be Maryland Mortgage Program itself. But the other programs also available in Delaware.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Deb. Does that help a little bit? Good, good. Keep Ryan's information. We have guys like Ryan affiliated with our company because they're good. That's why we have them, right? He's giving up time to do this today, to spend a little time talking to us, right? I'm asking the 25 of you here that I know you have lenders and I know you have people that you know, look at our program of our people, realize that they're good, and try to direct some business their way too. Let's try to support them as they're supporting us. Two things to close. February 15th is a company-wide business meeting, 10 to 11:30, I guess, Jan? Is that what we're doing? Right? It'll be Zoom. We'll see you then. We'll probably have some more updates on the market during that time. And the last piece of housekeeping, pay attention to your CE credits, right? Don't think you're going to fool them. You ain't, right? As realtors leave the market, guess where the Association of Realtors is going to get their money from? You're going to get it from you guys when you don't take your CE, and you get fined. So take your CE. I just finished my Maryland. I've got to fit 15 hours in for DC, like I got time for that and like I care about that, but I got to do it, you know, within the next 3 weeks, which means 2 Saturdays I got to sit here and stare at people not like you. Anyway, it's the price of success. Love you. Have a great week. Be good. See you at the meeting, and thanks so much for coming. See as many of you as I can in person soon.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you, man.
See you guys. Thank
Okay,
you.
guys, be good. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for everything.
You're welcome. Have a great day.